Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Najiba Hlemi, the Executive Director of Foster and Adopted Parent Advocacy Center, FAPAC. I also have the privilege of working alongside her, and I can tell you she leads with passion, vision, and a deep commitment to the families we serve. Najiba's connection to this world is personal. She entered foster care at the age of 14, and those experiences shaped her drive to improve the system for others. By 28, she was already an executive director, bringing nearly a decade of nonprofit leadership experience to her role today. She's a strong advocate for youth and foster families in DC, leading programs, building partnerships, and making sure every voice is heard. Uh, Please join me in welcoming my colleague and our inspired executive director, Najiba Hlemi.
I have a theory that everybody is affected by foster care, even when you're not in foster care. So can you raise your hand and keep them up if you know someone who was adopted or grew up in foster care? Keep them up. Oh, well, that ends there. I mean, I was also going to ask you, if you just experience someone who lives with or was raised by an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, that's kinship care, a form of foster care. Yeah, so you'd be amazed how many people are growing up in informal type of family settings that are foster. So today I want to talk about 5 things that we can all do to support children growing up in foster care. This is meant for everybody to find a space in it. The foster care system is vast, right? So if you are someone who's very passionate about it and you want to do more, there are steps for you. If you are somebody that just wants to get your feet wet or just learn about it or support in an easier way, there's that also. So there are actually 500,000 children in the nation in foster care, which is actually, I'm sorry, there's now 400,000. There's new data. So it's decreasing. That's a good thing. In DC, there are about 500. Right? And maybe 595, I think, is the number we saw most recently. 10 years ago, that was 2,000. The reason this is decreasing is because our country is investing more in 2 things. One is prevention, right? Keeping families together, addressing the root causes of foster care, drug addiction, things of that nature, right? Not just displacing children just because they're poor. And then we're also investing in kinship care. So trying to place children more with relatives. Now, that could be a good thing and a bad thing, and we're still seeing what that is going to mean, because you could guess that if someone is growing up in the same type of family culture or systems, that they could still be negatively impacted, but we're still testing that. But the whole point is we want to keep families together. We don't want to separate them. So there is hope. We're all working on that. It's going pretty well. Now, our mission at the Foster and Adoptive Parent Advocacy Center, or FAPAC, is to improve the quality of life of children in different family systems, right? We started with foster families, then adoptive families, and now birth families, and we're working with all sorts of families. In this picture, you'll actually notice these 2 teens. They participated in one of our programs. Last year, we do it every year, a teen summit for foster youth, and they're both under 20. And they have children. Well, in DC, when you have children and you're in foster care, your children are also in foster care. The good thing is they continue to receive the support, right, until they're on their own and they're going to be okay, so that they're not just left out there as young teen moms. So how do we impact children? This is the statistics: 400,000 children in DC and in the US, and 593 in DC. How does someone end up in foster care? Well, here are some more stats, first of all, before we go to that. There are 20,000 children that exit the foster care system every single year without ever being adopted, right? And of those, there are some startling statistics about that. 25% will attempt suicide, 70% will be on government assistance, 50% will be unemployed, 50% will become homeless, less than 5% will ever earn a college degree, and 90% will enter chronic poverty and likely to repeat the cycle of abuse and neglect. So although we're seeing the statistics getting better, we're displacing families and children less, we're also seeing that the children that are displaced, they're struggling, right? So there are 3 main reasons why someone, really the number one is the biggest reason why someone ends up in foster care. It's neglect. Neglect can be educational neglect, not taking your children to school for whatever reason. It could be leaving them unfed. It could be lots of things, right? And then it's abuse. I think sometimes we assume that all children in foster care have been abused. That's not the case. Sometimes it's just neglect, not just. It's pretty terrible, but it's neglect. And then abuse, and then other parental issues. In DC, we see this mostly as being substance abuse, where parents are not able to take care of their children because their struggles there. There are many risk factors, and you can see on the screen, that would cause a parent to become abusive to their children. Now, this is interesting for someone like me to read because I grew up in foster care, right? And one of the things that I've had to do was to reconcile how I felt about these things with my own birth parents, understanding that their circumstances landed them where they are, and therefore they went on to react and behave the way they did, right? And these are systemic issues that we see in families that are continuing for generations. You have a history of abuse and neglect on parents. You have physical and mental illness, single parenting, which we all know is extremely challenging, domestic violence, disabled children. Now we're seeing more children with autism entering the foster care system because it's so hard, and parents are challenged to have to find a way to care for their children in this way. Something that FAPAC is really good at is serving the children who are in foster care, but also understanding the dynamics of how they ended up there and how their parents ended up there also. So 5 things you can do to help. It's going to go from the most intensive to the least, right? So let's look at number 1. You can be a foster parent in your jurisdiction. So it depends. If you're in DC, you go through the DC Child and Family Services Agency. If you're in Maryland, there are multiple private agencies you can go through. Foster care is not permanent. They tell you that right away. It's not meant for you to take care of these children forever. The hope is that they will be reunified with their birth parents once they meet certain metrics. If you're not into completely giving up your home to a child, which it's tough, right? You can consider mentoring a young person. You can do this through groups like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, or my favorite, the Court-Appointed Special Advocates for Abused and Neglected Children, CASA. Okay, CASA is wonderful. They're a straight up advocacy organization for children. So you meet with your youth you're assigned to, who is in foster care, usually due to abuse, and you are an appointed advocate. So you go to court. You advocate for this person. Every child in foster care has a guardian ad litem, but they barely have time for the children. I had one. I barely ever saw him, but I saw my CASA worker every single week. We celebrated my 16th birthday. She knew everything. She was in court. If I said I don't agree with that, she would say she doesn't agree with that, right? So that's what you do. You are an advocate for this child. You are trained and I think there are some Rotarians that are CASA workers that I've also met. So that's a great way to contribute. Number 3, if you don't want to do the other 2, donate to a local organization like FAPAC or others, right? So every year we collect, this is a picture from our Christmas event. We collect toys and things of that nature. We wrap them up and we give it to the youth during our Christmas party. You can go that route too. If that doesn't work for you and you rather give your time, which is also very needed, you can volunteer with local organizations. Again, we need a Grinch at our Christmas party. You want to wear a costume? You want to come and hang out with us? We love that. And it's so funny. The kids are so scared and I laugh every time, but it's so fun, right? And if you can't, if you don't like that structure of that, there's one simple thing that every single person here can do. Put down your phone, take out your headphones, and talk to a young person next to you. That's it. They are lonely. They're struggling. There's not enough for them to do. We haven't found a good way to engage them. Our city is being taken over, and we're seeing that the impact is there's a lot going on with youth, and they just need adults to talk to them. I know it's sometimes a little bit scary because you're not sure. You hear a lot of things, but just talk to a young person. Get to know them. Ask them questions. Encourage them. That's it. Here's my call to action, right? I have to always have a call to action. So volunteer with us at our Christmas event. If you're interested, our Rotary chapter is going to be there volunteering, or club, is going to be there volunteering, and we'd love to have you there too. We need people to, like I said, be Santa Claus, be Grinch, play different things do different activity stations. Andrea's organizing all of this, by the way, so she's amazing for doing all of that. Or just wrapping presents and coming and hang out with us. Or you can always donate. I'm happy to take questions now.
So I know the Capitol Hill Club volunteers in a summit or a training. I think it would be great for our club to participate. Can you share more about that? I know it wasn't talked about.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of history. So a few years ago, foster parents were calling us and saying these kids are homeless after they leave foster care. And we had not really looked into that. So we hosted our first summit to figure out what's going on with teens who are close to aging out and some who had aged out. And the response was overwhelming. With that, since then, we have used this opportunity to learn about systemic issues that we can support youth with, but also we use it to mentor them for their next step in life. So I welcome you to come and volunteer with us, and you'll serve as a mentor for a few hours with one young person. You'll go through a quick curriculum that I developed, which is helping them develop their next steps in their adulthood, right? So it's wonderful. We need like 40 people for that because we're trying to give every single youth an individual to work with for a few hours. April 6th.
Hi, Nancy, past president, and I just wanted to let you know that our past president, Lisa Cohen, was a foster child, grew up in the system, wrote a book, and also passed Lisa's Law in the District of Columbia, which means that every child in foster care has a suitcase of their own. They do not move around with plastic bags. And she did that her whole life, and it was so demeaning. And she realized it. And we did that last year. We raised money. We got these suitcases. We gave them away. It was a great effort. And then the law was passed and because of her advocacy.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's wonderful.
Could you maybe tell us a bit, do you have any special requirements for potential volunteers? Is there a pre-registration process before people can work with your children?
For our summit, yes. So you would register on our website. We do a quick search against a database for any quick, issues for background, and then you're welcome to be there. It's completely supervised. So that's pretty much all you have to do is just fill out that form, and then we'll, invite you in. We'll have a quick orientation, and then you can volunteer.
I'm a former child advocate in Maryland, and so we had a different model when I was representing children than the guardian ad litem. We were actual children's attorneys, and so it's a different model that I think it's really important to discuss. I don't know if you can touch on that, but I also had a question about how you're tracking the youth that you do serve, and are you able to reunite the guardian ad litems with the attorneys or any of those types of meaningful relationships that have been developed?
Sure. So a GAL, guardian ad litem, is assigned to every child who basically has to go to court, right? Because they need a representative, right, for their rights. So every child, usually most children in foster care who have to show up in the court system for whatever reason, will have a guardian ad litem who's responsible for meeting with them and advocating for what's best for them. But I don't know what your experience was like, but their caseload is pretty full. Same with social workers. It's very full. So they do the very best that they can. That's why we really need other advocates and volunteers, CASA workers to support in that work. But all of them are very, very much important. And then you had another question.
Let me just add a footnote to you. For the children's attorney in Maryland, if the child wants to go back to their abuser, we have to go in and represent the voice of the child. So that's the difference. We're not always advocating best interests of the child. We have to go and interview them and sit down like we would any other attorney-client relationship. And so if the child says, I want to go back home to mom, I love mom, and mom is beating her, we have to find a way to get the child back home and then advocate for services and things to protect the child. So that makes it a little tougher. It's a minority representation standard. Most folks have the guardian ad litem best interest of the child standard, but that was the nuance. But my other question was just whether you're tracking the youth that you're serving, years later, and if there's some way to reconnect them with their guardian ad litem or their children's attorney, things like that, people that they've met along the way, their CASAs. Do you have events that bring them back together?
Right now, we don't. It's hard to get in touch with the kids who are in the system in the first place. So we are trying now to create this kind of list of database of youth that we're working with and the supports that we're giving them. But as a very small nonprofit, we don't have access to the same amount of resources and data. But it just so happens that I was thinking about the exact same thing yesterday because a young man walked into our office and he said, oh, I need, whatever. So we supported him with whatever he was picking up. And then I asked him, did you hear about the summit? He said, no. I said, well, did you graduate? No, I need to finish and he's 21. I need to finish my GED. So there are all these gaps in there. And I thought, man, what's going to happen to you? Like, I want to know what's going to happen. So I just kept thinking there has to be a way we can track what's actually happening. Well, we know that they're more likely to face a lot more issues. I don't think the Child Family Services always wants to take, full control of that, right? Because you're saying we took care of them while they were in the system, but then who's really responsible for them after they leave? Is it the responsibility of the government? Is it, So it's hard to want to keep tracking, but that is something we were thinking about is how do we do that?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Best wishes to you.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for being here today. So kind of a two-part question. With the first part and more clarifying with CASA, because I have a good friend who works for them in Atlanta, and I didn't see it as a volunteer. I thought it was an actual paid position. Are there volunteer positions as well? Just to clarify. And then second, has your organization explored at all any benefit of bringing together a growing kind of senior, aging community in the area with the foster kids, connecting the two?
Okay. Yes. So through the summit, right? So that's the opportunity that anyone in the community, especially if you've had we had someone who, just retired from the Secret Service, right? And he's volunteering by working with one person. They met at the summit. They chose to continue that mentoring relationship with permission of the foster parent. And now this young person is thinking about joining the Air Force. And he failed his test, but he has somebody who's there to encourage him and tell him to take it again. Right. So those types of things, absolutely. And as far as paid CASA, what I know of CASA, I haven't connected with them on that in a long time, but they're all volunteers. But it might be a different model because there's CASAs in every jurisdiction pretty much. So Fairfax CASA might be different than Atlanta CASA or yeah.
Thank you so much for the wonderful work you're doing. My question goes on two sides. You mentioned that children of the foster parents sometimes also end up into the system. What are the measures out there to end the cycle? Number two, on the issue of parental rehabilitation, do you connect in that if the causes are historical neglect, abuse, substance abuse, those are issues which can be handled, and maybe in the future, parents come to their senses and the children maybe be able to reunite back. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we started recognizing that children who have this generational that are re-ending up because we actually teach a parenting class for birth parents as a prevention to foster care. And just from our own research, from our own data, the majority of the families that are taking the classes were in foster care. Right. So now we know, okay, this is continuing to grow. And then as far as parent rehabilitation, that's a program that's actually funded by the DC government. It's not a ton of funding. We still need to fundraise for it, but that we meet every Saturday. We graduate and the classes are pretty small. We're graduating only maybe 20, 30 people a year, but it's a comprehensive parenting class that teaches child development, but also addresses the emotional states of the parents themselves and helps them alleviate whatever issues and address the issues that they're facing. Lots of different nonprofits are doing these things. We're all trying different ways to try to address the issue to prevent foster care in the first place. Ideally, I can work myself out of a job.
I have a question.
Hi.
Have you seen in your practice, do the kids actually have the suitcases? Do they get to keep the suitcases? Because I know sometimes kids in foster care, their valuable stuff gets taken from them. But do all these kids, does every foster kid now have a suitcase?
So the issue is that when they come into care, it's so quick. It could be at midnight. And who's going to get them a suitcase? at midnight, right? The Child Family Services Agency doesn't have a whole bunch of suitcases just sitting around to take it to them. So that's the first issue. And we actually got a call from someone in Senate last year saying, we want to pass a suitcase law, which is great. But the need is so much more important for when they're actually in care and what happens. And the type of attention that they're receiving when they're in care. The suitcase is wonderful, though. I mean, I received a donated suitcase and it was wonderful. Aside from that, I packed in trash bags. You got to go. I went through 5 different foster homes and 2 different group homes. You have to pack your bags and you have to go. But I think if we just focus on the suitcases, we're ignoring the other issues of what happens to them after they're in care. But I think anytime you can have a care package and something that makes someone feel less lonely, it's great, whether it's a suitcase, an encouraging message, whatever it is to help them in this transition because it's really difficult. And as far as valuables, I just ordered my high school yearbook because it was lost in one of my foster homes, right? And that's something that's important to me. I went to my 20th year anniversary for my school, my high school, and I'm like, I don't remember half these people. I wish I had a yearbook. So I just ordered one. And that's something that's so sentimental to me that I'm like, okay, I'm going to order it again. But if there's a way that if you're interacting with children in foster care to help them keep their things together, because that was lost.
Hi, Najiba. I just have a question. How does FAPAC differ from organizations that are more specifically focused on child welfare? And what are some of the indicators that you see make FAPAC more successful by having parents more involved?
Yeah. So thank you. So FAPAC is an organization that is so small and so nimble that we can meet the needs that the system cannot. Right. So that can be almost anything. And then on top of that, while we're meeting those needs, let's say the Child Family Services will call us and say, we need a bed in this house. There's a new child that just got placed, or they need a stroller. I do spend my time in Andrea too ordering a bed, right? And we fit those little needs. But while we're doing those things and serving the families and the parents and educating them on foster care, we're also learning some things that could be systemically related. And with that, we do advocacy work, right? So we'll bring all this data together from the everyday little pieces of work that we're doing. And then we're going to DC Council. We're going all over the place. We're meeting with the mayor. We actually have an upcoming meeting with the House Ways and Means Committee for the Chafee funds, which funds programs, education, and other things for youth exiting foster care. So we're so small with the $700,000 budget, but then we translate that into this massive amount of work that we can only do because we see the tiny pieces that nobody else is seeing. I hope that answers your question. So we do it in other ways too. So working directly with the youth, but also working directly with the foster parents because they can report other things to us too. Their voices have always been very important in the work that we do.
What you're doing is incredible. There's no doubt. Because the children that are not taken care, they will be very subjected to sexual, physical, and emotional trauma. Do you know more or less how many of these children before entering in your place have been traumatized? I'm talking about trauma, no stress.
All of them. 100% of youth entering the foster care system are traumatized. And if their background didn't traumatize them, the foster care system will traumatize them.
You know, only one, I'm a psychiatrist, so I know what I'm talking about. Only one trauma in life as a child, like a sexual trauma or physical trauma, created damage forever. Mm-hmm. You can imagine the rest.
You'd be amazed how many people, if you are ever open enough to have this conversation, are sexually abused that you know. And I'm sure you know as a psychiatrist. Yeah. And I leave you with this. My mentor, Linda Roberts, when I was 18, my freshman year in college, she said, I'm coming to West Virginia University and picking you up. Let's go Mountaineers. And you're going to speak and volunteer with me and intern with me. And through that internship process, she was my mentor. I came to a Rotary meeting and I talked to Rotary about the importance of foster care. She was the executive director of CASA, Fairfax CASA at the time. And since then, I've been amazed with Rotary. It is an honor to be part of this group. I'm so excited. And any way I can connect with all of you, please sign me up. Thank you.
I don't know if they told you, but you're getting a tree planted in your name.
A tree?
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I'm not kidding.
Oh.
So
to be a bench when I die too. Like,
We're going to have coordinates for you that you can find your tree later. Isn't that beautiful?
yeah, this is the coolest gift I've ever gotten. And I'm not a gift person, but this is definitely awesome. Thank you.
If you need to cry, I got a thank you.